Now I've made the rear brake line, this one here. Started off by doing the fitting on the other end, where it joins the hose that goes to the rear of the master cylinder. So I did that one first, shaped it. Let's see, it comes in around the chassis there. Shaped it, cut it over length, so I could actually work out where the join would be. So once I was able to determine where the end of the pipe was, I cut that off and put the other fitting on. So that's not a problem, that fits. I've joined those two up now. Now what has to happen next, sorry, that one and that one, I'm now working on the line that goes to the other side of the car. So once again, I bent the pipe to roughly to the shape of the old one. More importantly, I got the shape at this end right. Put the fitting on there, and I've just connected that up. I'll put the clamp on here where it clamps to the chassis. Now what I have to do is to actually bend the pipe in situ, put it right down into the groove of the chassis at the bottom there, and it'll come up here and clamp onto this. Once I've got the shape right, or shape right at the end, at the bottom end here, then I'll work on reshaping this section here and work out where I've got to cut the line. So I've hopefully made this over length. Once I've worked out where the cut will be, then I'll put the fitting on there and connect that up. So it's getting very close to having a new set of brake lines. Alright, I've cut the brake line to length, or I marked it. I'm now putting the flare, the double flare on the end. Important that you remember to put the fitting on before you put the flare on. So that's there. It's in the flaring tool. These tools you can buy on the internet, they're not expensive, and there are good videos to show you how to use them. I'm not an expert. This is the, what would it be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, this is probably the 8th flare I've done. A couple of those have been disasters. So practice makes perfect, like all things. Step before this is to square off the end, which I've done, and chamfer the inside of that, which I've done with a tool that comes with the kit. That's not a problem. Setting the flare up, this is the die. It's got to come through the tool for the width of that die. So I've done that. Next thing, I have to lubricate the die. You do that with just some brake fluid. So just done that, brake fluid on that. Put the other piece on. Where I've made mistakes, I've tended to rush. It's important not to rush. Take your time, make sure everything is in position correctly. Some of the mistakes I made was not having this square. Now, it doesn't always appear square, but it's got to be reasonably square to the tool and square to that, and also pushing straight down. It tends to go on a little bit of an angle when you press this down. That seems to be not so much of a problem, so long as you don't rush. Now, to do the first flare, I actually have to wind this down, and don't rush it. If you rush it, you're liable to crack it. Just gradually wind it down, make sure it's going reasonably square. This one is not quite square, but it should square up by the time it meets the surface of the tool here. So it's almost down. Still going down. It's almost flush. Just a bit more. Okay, that's flush. Won't go any further. Now undo the tool and check the flare. That should pop out. Okay, that's the first flare. The second is done without the die. You just center this and make sure it's centered. Now it's very easy to crack this if you do it too quick or try and push it down too far. So all you're trying to do is to put a little bit of a concave impression in the top of that flare, so this doesn't go down too hard. And if you're a bit worried about that, just gradually do it and check it. Okay, that's starting to go alright. Put it back on. Now this doesn't go down hard. If you do it hard, you'll crack the top of the flare. Let me go a little bit more. A bit more lubrication on that. Okay, that should be enough. Alright, now just take all that off. Another thing, I found that this is very hard to, because it's got two lock nuts, it tends to go out of square to itself. So you find one end's drop down relative to the other side. I use just this scraper to try and level the two out as I tighten those up. Now, take that out. Okay, whether you can see that, but that's the flare you're looking for. Now I've just got to clean up a few little rough edges. I just do that with a little bit of emery, and also where it's clamped on there, I need to just take some of the edges off. If you don't clamp it tight enough, you'll find that when you wind this down, it pushes that down, and then that ruins the flare. And if you tighten it too much, you end up with a bit of a burr on there, so it's a catch-22. But that little burr can clean off, and when I clean that off, I can actually then slide that up, because these fittings are a fairly tight fit on the end there, but that'll clean up nicely. So that's how you do it. That's what you're looking for in the end. That's how I'll just clean it up with a bit of emery. Just a few little sharp sections there I need to clean off, but that should do. I've just been cleaning up the front slave cylinders for the brakes, full of muck, but bearing in mind these haven't been used for many, many, many years. Who knows how long? 40 years, 50 years maybe. So they're full of sludge and all sorts of things. So it's taken ages to clean all that out, and I've done that. All the parts are now clean. It's only just a case of reassembly. I have a kit with new pieces, so I'll put those in. I've got new copper washers. It also comes with new ball races for the valves. Now, it's hard to grab hold of them. All I need is to drop them on the ground and not find them. I can get them out of the packet. Easier said than done. Don't know where it's gone. Oh, still there. And so they're actually smaller than the ones that were in it. Now, the one that was in the housing is this one here, quite large. The replacement, much smaller. But having a look inside the housing, the hole is certainly small enough for that small ball race to seal. The reason I won't put the old one back in, and you can't see this, but I can certainly see it, it's actually gone into the hole, so it's recessed the mark of the hole in the ball bearing. So the problem with putting that back is if I put it back in it's a different position, it will leak. So I won't be putting those back in. Reassembly shouldn't be that difficult. I'll put a bit of brake fluid in the housing just to make sure it's lubricated when I put things back in. Not too much, but just enough so I can slide things in. Now the way this goes, hack goes on the end of the spring, the hack goes inside the valve, and it goes in that way, and of course the piston goes in over that. So that's how it's got to go back in. Now I don't know whether I can assemble it out here or whether I've actually got to assemble it up against the car. Almost dropped that in the dirt. Caught it in time on my shoe. I'll put just a little bit of brake fluid in the housing now. So just enough to lubricate things. And obviously lubricate the seal. Apologise for the angle grinder in the distance. That's my neighbour working in his garage. He works on military vehicles. Okay, well that seems to push in alright. So I'll just push that seal in there. Just put a bit of brake fluid around that. Okay, that'll go on all nicely. Now I'll drop that new ball bearing into the bleed valve. Put a little bit of brake fluid on that. And tighten that down a little bit. I'm not going to fully tighten it. Put it down so it's holding. Okay, that's ready to put on the car. The other fitting, of course, to fit onto the brake hose is that one. I've cleaned all that out, but I won't put that on until I've actually got it on the car. So quite simple, really, providing these are not scored inside. This one wasn't scored. I've got the other one in the tin here, just in some petrol. I've got to clean that one up and finish that off. But that's how it's done. Quite simple. The new copper washers. Copper washer goes on that side, and it doesn't fit. Oh, look at that. It looks like I'll be using the old copper washer. So I'll just clean that up a bit more. With the hole in the replacement, fits the shaft but doesn't fit the collar on the back end of the fitting there. So that won't be any good to me. Okay, that's how it's done. Now I've put the slave cylinders back on the backing plates and connected up the new hoses. I've also locked up the brake lines, lift those all up so they're all ready to go. So this side's been locked up as well. The master cylinder I've still yet to do, so I'll work backwards, but at this stage I'll keep adding bits to the front of the car here. I've got a few control pieces to put in. I was going to drop in the exhaust pipe there. I might loosely put that in place, but I've got things to fit behind it, so I've got a water drain out of the block there I've got to fit, and also the gearbox linkage which bolts under the frame there. I found it, so I should be able to fit that one reasonably easy. I'll probably also connect some of the wiring up to the reverse switch here, so I can get things out of the way before I look at putting more on the motor.